What is it about retirement that you actually want? This is a surprisingly hard question. And for those that can answer it, they are all over the place. Some people want to travel, others spend time with family. Maybe there's a specific hobby they want to follow. Others even want to start a business. Now, if all you want to do is not work, then retirement is exactly what you want. But if your ambitions are any broader than that, then focusing solely on retirement and the traditional way that you prepare for it may be counterproductive to your goals. This is an incredibly diverse topic, so in this video we're going to focus on one very specific example of a couple who may be derailing their actual ambition by focusing solely on how early can they retire. I'm Mike from Canavan Wealth. Let's take a look. John and Tanika are 55 years old and they just finished paying for their third child's higher education. Together, they make about $200,000 a year, but like most Americans, John and Tanika live in reality and they were unable to save as much as they would have liked to, especially for the last 8 years of paying for college. Now, together, they have about $300,000 between their 401ks, but they feel like they're behind. Now that they have the expense of college off their plate, they feel like they have about $30,000 a year that they can invest. So they turn to someone like me and ask, when's the earliest I can retire? I turn around and ask, what is it about retirement that you actually want? After a bit of soul searching, it turns out that their primary goal is to travel and see the world. This is something they've been putting off for years. Now, we do a bit of number crunching, and it turns out that their mortgage will be paid off in about 10 years, which will dramatically reduce their expenses around retirement time. And we end up planning for about $6,000 a month in today's money, and that's all post-tax, meaning how much is actually going to show up in their account after they've paid taxes. We're also going to budget $20,000 a year for travel, and all of these numbers are going to be inflated about 3% a year going into the future. There's a lot more to this plan, but here's a good first look at it. You can see time on the bottom and investment value on the left. Right now, they're at about $300,000 a year, and over the next 10 years, saving about $30,000 a year and 6.5% investment growth, we could expect their investments to reach about $1 million pre-tax at 65 when they were targeting to retire. They'd start drawing Social Security at this time, and you can see their portfolio starts to level out due to withdrawals. But eventually, inflation eats away at their spending power, and the portfolio value starts to take a nosedive and hits zero around 93. Now, we were projecting John to live to about 85 and Tanika to about 95, which are pretty realistic numbers for couples these days. John and Tanika are probably worried about their assets running out before they die. But as a financial advisor, my biggest concern is that this is a 40-year projection. You can imagine trying to predict the last 40 years from the vantage point of 1983 would have been a pretty tall order. Trying to plan anything over such a long period of time is virtually impossible. Except that's the reality that we live in as advisors, so we do our best. Now, to fix the graph, we consider pushing retirement out another 2 years. Inflation adjusted annual savings around that time would be about $40,000 a year. We might still expect about 6.5% return. So we see portfolio value hit about 1.2 million. They've also deferred their Social Securities 2 more years, which means those have gotten bumped up. And you can see how dramatically the chart has changed. Now, their investment value is keeping up pretty well with their withdrawals, and it lasts well into their retirement. However, this just goes to further reinforce how very difficult it is to plan things over such long time periods when minor changes can have these massive swings on portfolio value. When in truth, there's going to be all sorts of unknown events, expenses, market conditions that are going to really impact the outcome of this model. However, John and Tanika have a direction that they can start understanding now. Save for the next 10 to 12 years and retire around 65 to 67. Let's take a step back and remember that the priority of John and Tanika's retirement had very little to do with not working. Instead, they were more concerned with starting to travel. Now, their travel budget in today's money is about $20,000 a year, which inflated would be about $30,000 a year when they were actually in retirement. And that's certainly enough money to pay for a few nice trips, but they're not going to be traveling every month. There's no need to completely stop working in order to start traveling. In fact, the only thing preventing them from traveling right now is the fact that they're investing $30,000 a year so that they can stop working in 10 to 12 years. Now, they do want to stop working at some point, but age 65 is pretty young these days. So let's take a slightly different approach. In this plan, John and Tanika are going to save about $10,000 a year, not $30,000. Instead, they're going to spend that extra $20,000 to enact their travel plan and start traveling right now. Now, to compensate this, when they get to 67, they're not going to fully retire. They're instead going to target some type of part-time work, maybe contract, at least something less stressful. And all they need to do is earn about $50,000 a year in today's money. Inflation adjusted, that's about $75,000 then. They need to do it for about 5 years. So at age 67, they're not going to fully retire. They're just going to target making about $75,000 a year for 5 more years until they're age 72. The graph really doesn't look that different, and John and Tanika get to travel for the next 12 years instead of saving to travel in 12 years. But the more important takeaway here is that this is a much more flexible plan. It can adapt to changing situations. If they work for the next 12 years and save, and it happens to be another lost decade like 1998 to 2008, and the stock market really doesn't do much, it's going to be a really tough pill to swallow that they need to keep working because they're not quite there for retirement. But a plan that pushes full retirement out 5 years is a lot easier to stomach if you were able to achieve your goals of travel over those 12 to 17 years. I'm not telling you to stop saving for retirement. I just think it's important to understand that planning for a 25 to 30-year retirement is extremely difficult. Working slightly longer while focusing on your entire life might make you happier in the long run, and it will reduce the risk of your retirement. Later on in your career, you can focus more on time off, contract work, or maybe just a less stressful position. You don't always have to be gunning for the corner office. This was actually part 2 of a series. Part 1 is right here. Don't worry, you didn't need to watch them in order, but you might find that video valuable as well. If you like the content, please consider subscribing to the channel for more. Otherwise, I hope this has been informative, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.